What does it mean to be developmental in science? What we're often talking about is being developmental in science is where you try to give the best feedback that you possibly can at any given time when somebody asks you for your help. And this happens a lot. Sometimes journals stress to be developmental, where they say, they explicitly want you to be developmental, or they say, do the best that you possibly can. Always try to give positive feedback the best that you possibly can. And generally, most scientific journals will still reject what you are actually doing. But I'm on the fence in terms of being developmental, and I'm going to tell you why. I almost always stress kindness and generosity and empathy as best as I possibly can on this channel. If you follow what I've been talking about on the Reciprocity Project, that's why it's called the Reciprocity Project. It's all about giving back and kind of giving this generalized giving back as best as you possibly can. This consumes an enormous amount of resources. What you'll discover is that there is a lot of very well-intentioned and very generous people that are in the scientific research game. Not everybody, obviously. I stress that a lot. Many people aren't, but many people actually are. And I often think about this as a simple problem that one would look at in terms of resources that are being used. There's two ways that you can expend resources. One of them is continuous improvement, and the other one is through selection. And continuous improvement is very, very difficult to actually do, and it consumes a great deal of resources. Generally, if you think about rejection rates of journals, you might experience something like a 95% rejection rate, and then you have to send it to another journal and do something with that based on that feedback. And it's not always the same feedback. It's not always particularly, reviewers often do not agree with each other. On the other side, there's the selection model that if something actually happens, you just get rejected and you go on your very way, and you can sort of do something better with your time, effort, and resources. Now, it turns out it's a hard problem because developing scientific ideas often requires developing scientific ideas, and the first time you come up with something doesn't mean it's actually good. And so we have this problem of spending too much time and effort developing ideas, if you were to do developmental, versus leaving that idea lie, or just leaving the profession altogether because your ideas are not necessarily good enough. And it's not clear to me ever in terms of what is the best method of handling any of the scientific efforts in terms of the best resources that are being consumed. Like, we tend to spend more time developing and spending extra resources developing ideas that may not necessarily be developed and shouldn't be developed, but you never know unless you actually develop those particular ideas and you actually spend some time and effort doing that. And so that's why I often stress kindness and generosity, that it's all about trying to develop as best as you possibly can and being helpful. But the contingent on this, the key thing is that the one side is receptive, and that there is the capability as well to receive that information, that feedback that's actually coming in. And it's not always the case. In fact, it's maybe less the case than it is the majority of the time, where people are listening and understanding the feedback that you're actually giving. And it's not necessarily a capability of knowledge or of skill or intelligence, but it's a lot to do with how people are actually feeling and how they're processing information and how they're seeing things. So the challenge with developmental feedback is it worth your time and effort? And from my perspective, I am completely on the fence with this. I have no idea if it's actually worth the time and effort to develop ideas and to push things for a long time and to continuously give good feedback. I think the only thing that you can do is to pick your battles. Try to identify people that will be receptive to feedback, even if it's a little bit tricky, and try to prioritize what you're actually talking about and thinking about. And I hate all of that stuff because it's very strategic, and there sometimes is people that are being locked out that should get good feedback. But you often have to think about how to expend those resources that you have. That's why I'm building the whole reciprocity project, is I think that we can combine tools, machines, with human feedback to do this a little bit better. And I understand the dynamics where eventually machines will be reviewing other machines' work. And it's ironic when you see that. But I don't know how to escape this problem of giving developmental feedback at the same time and developing ideas that take a lot of work, but at the same time understanding that is wasteful. And that's also a giant problem. Anybody that's been in the scientific profession long enough, the research profession long enough, you realize that you waste a god-awful amount of time and effort on things of giving feedback and giving ideas that just really don't go anywhere. And in a large part of that has to do with the receptivity on the other side. And you just don't know what that may be. So what can you do personally going forward? Give yourself a lot of forgiveness. I think for me, that's been the biggest thing, is really stressing I could only do what I can do. And so if it means sometimes I can't respond to somebody, or, I respond to somebody and they're not receptive, they don't understand what I'm saying, that I just give myself a lot of grace and say, it just wasn't the right time, the right place. I might vent, as we all do in private, but giving a lot of grace, walking forward, regardless of what actually happens, I think it's the only way that we can handle this. And saying no, a lot of times when you just simply don't have the bandwidth, and move on. And it's all about just giving yourself grace, making sure that you are doing okay and doing your best at any given moment. I wish that there was a better way. I wish I had answers in terms of how to be more developmental. But that's it. Give yourself grace. Try. Do your best. Smile through when things are not being understood. And that's it. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.